Welcome, everybody. I'm here today with Jamie Holcombe. He's the CIO of US Patent and Trademark Office. And Jamie's got an amazing background in the military. He's served our country in many different capacities. One of the smartest guys I know when it comes to running a good, solid, secure, reliable organization in the Patent and Trademark Office. So welcome, Jamie. It's great to see you today.
Hey, it's great being here. Thanks a lot. Looking forward to our conversation, Jeff.
Me too. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the National Cybersecurity Strategy that was released earlier this month by the White House. And what it does, I think, is pretty much provides an umbrella for everything that's gone before of how we're going to defend our country. So you up for that?
I am. Let's go.
Let's go. There's been a lot of directives, and there's been a lot of statutes, and there's been a lot of guidance given by NIST and CISA and DHS and NSA, and everybody's in it. And so this feels to me like sort of an umbrella. How does this relate to all the existing dates, the existing things that have been put out there? I'll ask you that, okay? And I think the answer is umbrella, right?
I agree.
Yep.
Totally, I agree. And that's what executive orders should be. Now,
do you consider this an executive order, or was this?
That's a good point. No, because it was produced by the cybersecurity director within the White House. As I remember, his name was Chris Ingalls.
Yep.
And I actually sat down and spoke with him, and he is an Air Force Academy grad from, I believe, 74 or 76. I apologize, I don't know exactly. But what a very impressive man. And I know he had a very difficult job, and he really sunk his whole effort into that. He was duty, honor, country. I really thought that he had the right ideas. And I think what he tried to do was create, as you said, an umbrella. But he wanted it to be able to include everyone and yet still be effective, right? So you don't want to have something that's just a paper umbrella, because as soon as it rains, it'll get wet and soggy. So you want to have something with substance, and I believe that he was looking toward the follow-on efforts then to have that substance.
Yep. So, an interesting question is why now? And so the points that I've taken out of it, and others, your peers around the industry, is matter in national security. And we're coming to the realization that cyber controls physical. So, if you unplug cyber, all the physical stops today. And the way to attack physical is by attacking cyber. It's not by attacking physical. And so that's sort of why now. And it was really interesting. Ransomware, the word showed up 25 times in the document. And the point was that it's not about extorting money, it's about turning systems off. That's what's happening. Do you agree with that? Is that why this is coming out now? Because all of a sudden people are waking up and saying, this is a matter of national security?
Yeah, it's an awareness, but I think the awareness is less, it's just for those IT guys, and this is super secret, spooky stuff. No. This affects the normal person, and it affects the normal person in really deleterious ways. As you were talking about infrastructure, we haven't even talked about the horrors of how our water supply could be infected or diseased because some systems are not working on the perimeter, the physical. And that's how you would exploit that, right? Or you could take drones over and drop things. And without having those good cybersecurity fences and understand how they could attack and what the attack surface is. And that might be getting into the tradecraft and away from the fact that I think this was an awareness, like this is for everyone, not just for the spooky guys.
Well, in fact, there's a little passage in it that says sort of cybersecurity is essential to the basic functioning of our economy and our critical infrastructure, and therefore the strength of our democracy and democratic institutions. And the privacy and the security of our data and communications are foundational. And so it's kind of like just exactly what you said. This is core to our existence as people in the society we live in, the democracy we live in, because the best way to attack a democracy is to erode all trust in all institutions.
Definitely. And it could be physical and logical. And in this case, it's the logical trust that they're going after, because the infrastructure of logic is the internet. We've created something that we're able to be very resilient. You look at what happened during the pandemic and the way we could respond by everybody working at home. Well, not a lot of nations can do that. We were able to work at home without missing a beat. Now, of course, we did take some hits, but as it should be expected. I mean, the Spanish flu really affected a lot worse than what we've experienced in the recent pandemic. So we should thank our lucky stars that we had that logical infrastructure in there, and we were able to actually conduct commerce and even physical commerce. We figured out how to get that supply chain going. Even though there were a lot of issues, we were able to overcome. And you know, a lot of times people are always naysayers and, oh my God, I always talk about Eeyore, right? Oh my God, it's gonna be bad. But you know, I'm very optimistic because I'm looking at the positive aspects of what we learned out of the pandemic. It's a horrible thing, but take those lessons learned and apply them. There's no better time to be alive right now. It's awesome.
It really is. On this National Cybersecurity Strategy, there are like 5 pillars. They were called out specifically. And you've mentioned one, defend critical infrastructure. And I think we kind of really talked about why that's important. I mean, we have to. It's integrated. It doesn't come apart. We can't protect the physical if we're not protecting the cyber. The second one, which I think is really interesting, especially given your background, and you went to West Point and you served, and thank you for your service. But for the first time, we have a document that says we aren't just going to defend, we're going to disrupt and dismantle threat actors, which means not just defensive, we're going offensive. This is a huge change that I think just has gone over a lot of people's heads. What's your take on that, going offensive?
I think that's the only way to win. And why do I say that? Because throughout history, those people who stay on defense always lose. Very few sieges have been won. It's not defense. It's all about who takes the boldest actions to go out and forward and win. So I think this is a winning strategy finally. At the same time, we're going to have some courage in our statutes and our legislation. We need to have the authorities required to go on the offensive. And that is going to take a little while to get through Congress for them to understand exactly what that means. And a lot of people will be very reticent. They will, no, we can't do that. But we need to have the courage of conviction, as well as the courage to know that we are in the right. And there are many people who are trying to, cut us off at the knees, really, with that cyber attacks that are going on all the time. We are in a cyber war. If people don't understand that, then all they have to do is look at my monitor. They can come in the PTO and I'll show them the monitor of all the different attacks that happen every day.
And so you got to the third pillar, which is shape market forces to drive security and resilience. And again, back to the realization that we are all in the business of defending our democracy, our nation, because everything is connected. And somebody says, well, I'm just a little distributor of flowers and I'm not, nobody wants to attack me. They're wrong, because they are a gateway or they are a stepping stone, maybe 3 away from the intended target, but they are in the crosshairs. And so all of a sudden now we got to shape the market forces to drive that security. And it means 2 things. And I'll talk specifically for us, for Venafi, and for then, I think, people that create software and services. We're going to be held accountable. We have to be. We have to not be able to ship bad software, provide a bad service that causes you to get attacked or you to get hacked, and then be able to say, gee, sorry, it's just a bug. And today we can pretty much do that. We can hide behind disclaimers and all kinds of things and limitations of liability. that's going to shape the economy or the economics of doing what we do, which is create very strong cyber platforms for you to defend yourself with. And it speaks also to resilience, right? You're going to have laws that require no single points of failure. Look what happened when, a lot of small companies had a single point of failure with Silicon Valley Bank. Not very resilient if all your money's in one place. So we talk about concentration risk. So that's going to get legislated too, which means you can't just put all your eggs in one cloud either. You're going to have to be in multiple clouds. So what does this mean, do you think, for innovation? And you're at the nexus, you're part of the patent and trademark infrastructure. With this kind of shift, is it going to help innovation? Is it going to hurt innovation? What's your perspective?
So I always love catalysts because you don't know what's going to be the consequence. And so we do have a catalyst here, and I love it because for creativity and innovation, it's going to flourish. Why? With every cat and mouse action, right? For every action, there's a reaction. So what we've stated in this strategy is the ability to go out and don't think in the old ways, think in the new ways. Right? Zero trust architecture. We could go through all that stuff. How is it going to change? The dirty little secret that you just pointed out in the software industry is most updates and versions are because they figured out a security patch, or they need to patch it because it's insecure. So people are letting this software out there, and most people wanted a market response. Like, well, we can't buy that. With the advent of more software and more holding people accountable to that quality and not accepting these things, hopefully the market will throw those folks off. The problem is it needs leadership. And so we have a lot of software giants, behemoths, who don't ascribe to, we really need to have secure software. Don't throw it out there. Who cares if there's some
don't worry about it.
Yeah,
don't worry about it.
We'll fix it later. It needs to go out there. And if we don't get it out, somehow competitors got to get it out first. Well, right. Competition is good to the point where it's not secure, right? Most people want two things, reliability and security. That's what we really have to be concerned with. So I'm hoping that we can show that. And we should lead as the government. We should lead in that environment, say like NIST or the other standards, right? Here's what you need to look for quality software, et cetera.
This is where I think the real innovation is going to come. And we are an innovator. We created the category called machine identity management. We'll talk a little bit more about where they fit into this machine identity, machines and machine identity. But the point that we have learned in spades is that innovation occurs when you try and match two or three things together that haven't been matched together before. And so you named reliability, you named security, and the one that the behemoths that you talked about always lean back on as well, speed to market, time to market. But I think, and I'm interested in your position on this, the real innovation is going to come from those that can go really, really fast, get into the market with something that's very secure and very reliable. And so the things that have generally been like a governance issue, right? The more secure it is, the slower it goes, or the less secure it is, the faster it goes. The innovation comes around, how do you go fast and secure and reliable all at the same time? That's innovation.
That's right. That's exactly right. And let's just talk about the 5 pillars of zero trust, because I think if I could point it out.
These are the second 5 pillars. The first 5 pillars were the National Cybersecurity Strategy. Now we got the 5 pillars of zero trust.
Yes. Thank you so much for that definition. You're right. So ZTA, zero trust architecture, that first pillar, I always start with the user, because everybody else starts there too, right? Identification, authentication, multi-factor authentication. We need to make sure you are who you say you are. And there's a lot of biology and so forth that you can use to authenticate. But remember, credentials are only there to authenticate who you were, not who you are. So biological samples like retina scans or fingerprints or other items, they're identifying who you are. So I think we're going to get even better with those things. The banks right now, when you think about it, on that user pillar, they're doing the entire, callback with a PIN on your text, right? So they have that not only username and password, but the PIN. I think that's a great way. Two-factor authentication, great. But the second pillar, application, not many people are talking about that because it's so difficult, but that's what we're saying. You need to have good, secure software when you put it out there, especially the generic software, Microsoft Office, all the different things involved with Word or DocX. All right, the third pillar, though, is the gold. It's the oil of software, hardware, everything, data. That third pillar of data. You need to encrypt your data. Everybody's encrypting it when they transmit it. How many people are encrypting it when it sits at rest? There's a price to be paid for it in performance. You have to decrypt in order to use it. Or do you have to? Can you have an encryption in use? And so that's another third pillar thing. The fourth pillar is networks. Now, we've done a lot of work on networks, and a lot of people just push that off to the internet, and they allow the networks to be connectivity and SSL, et cetera, during the transmission. So I think that one's pretty mature. But the fifth one is where you, Venafi, really fit. And that's your device authentication, machine identity. How many people are doing multi-factor machine identity? You don't hear that often, do you? Where are your certificates? What are the credentials? And so you have to have a maturity along the 5 different pillars and see how they all fit together. It's not one solution. It's an entire solution where the session is secure, and trust has a time component. We have time to kill in routing. Why don't we have time to kill in sessions? And, you know, the banks do that in their applications, sure, right? Yeah. You've been sitting around for 15 minutes. We got to make sure it's you.
What we see is actually a really interesting phenomenon, which is a lot of organizations allow software to run. They just allow it to run. They don't check to see if it's authorized to run, and if it's not, stop it from running. And so this is why the bad guys have a field day, because organizations don't check to see, does this have a valid identity that I put on it? And if it does, I'll allow it to run. If it doesn't, I'm not going to let it run. That's how ransomware gets its start. It's allowed to run. And so anyway, it gets back to this whole machine identity thing. Then we also have talked a number of times about the secure software development lifecycle. You have a lot of developers in your shop, and we're in the business of building platforms to secure things, especially machine identities. So it's kind of like, this has to be part of one of those pillars in a big way. Is that trusting the applications, trusting the software, and then authorizing it to run, making sure it's authorized software to run? Is that how you're thinking about it?
Oh, for sure. In fact, with our processes now, we call it not just DevOps, but DevSecOps. We have to have the security involved in the design, because without that, you're never going to get where you need to be as far as security goes.
How do you drive that? Because in most organizations, dev is off doing their own thing, and they say, security, you're slowing me down. So I'll get back to you. And they straight arm them, they slow roll them, they go off and do their own thing. How do you make that happen?
So we have moved away from the old project teams. So when we say DevSecOps, what we're doing is we create a product team, not projects. No more projects. Projects start and stop. Products keep moving. They have a life of their own. And your products are run by a product owner from the business, not from IT. And then, of course, it's supplemented, augmented, that product owner by a technical architect or a tech lead. And those two are the ones that are running not a triangle, but a box. Remember, the triangle represents the hierarchies. Yes, sir, no, excuse, sir, right? No, we don't use a triangle. We use a box, and we're trying to create agility, not just to do agile processes, but to be agile in what you're actually formulating. And when we say DevSecOps, there's developers next to security guys, next to testers, next to business analysts, and they're all working together. Now, of course, developers are going to go off, do their little code on their own, but when they come back and integrate, it's with everyone. And when you're doing unit testing and system testing and, comprehensive, to make sure that the business analyst is, your user is actually saying, yes, this will work. What if the security guy puts something that's just too onerous in? What's onerous? Is it 15 minutes? Is it 30 minutes to recheck the session, etc.? There's so many things that go into creating a product for the user. We're developing it all by having that one team. And we can't have huge teams because that's what bureaucracy is. We have to have small 12 to 15 people on a team, because with a squad, you can do a heck of a lot. I learned that in special operations. The only thing that really works is that small squad of people that are laser focused on getting that result. And what is the result? Done in sprints. Sometimes you have a restful sprint where you actually say, everybody take vacation. But you don't have to have a 3-week vacation. You can have a 2-week sprint in that regard, right?
That's
Sometimes
right.
you have maintenance sprints. Sometimes you have different, upgrade sprints, whatever it might be. You don't always have to be doing this, but DevSecOps is where it's at. And another thing that's really great, you give the autonomy to that product team to decide how they're going to do it, but you're giving them the what. And I swear it's amazing. If you don't tell people how to do things and you just give them the what, it's amazing the innovation that comes back, because people don't want to work stupid. They want to work smartly. And because of that, they do. And they find time to balance their life and all these other great things, but it's all about DevSecOps.
Congratulations on having a strategy for making sure that what you are developing is secure, because that is a real challenge. People want to go fast, and if anything slows them down, and for the most part, people think InfoSec slows people down, and it doesn't. And you found out it doesn't. And for full disclosure, you're one of our customers, and we work closely together. And one of the things that drove it was this notion of being able to have resiliency in your infrastructure. Now, every machine identity is based on some form of encryption. And encryption, more and more, is starting to be suspected of being subject to quantum attacks at some point in the future. In fact, if I listen to what NSA is saying and NIST is saying, there is a growing chorus. There's stuff going on. If you look at how fast AI is going, you look at how fast technology is growing, it's probably closer than we think, or we may not know what's going on. I mean, there are a lot of people working on it. So resiliency means being able to find all those things that could be vulnerable to a quantum attack, and then being able to swap them out immediately. And machine identities are one of those for sure. Otherwise, the identity is worthless. So where does resilience to, what I would call a cryptopocalypse? We've seen small ones. We haven't seen the big one yet, quantum. Where's that fit in your overall strategy, resilience of everything you're putting together?
Yeah, it's straightforward, right in the center of everything. Believe it or not, the 3 priorities that I have at the PTO are cybersecurity, resiliency, and moving to the cloud. Now, that resiliency that I'm speaking of actually means continuity of operations from a business unit, right?
Yep.
But the same can be applied in your example of resiliency after the apocalypse. And so we really need to understand how our encryption and decryption works, such that we have the ability to stave off old algorithms that are encryption and decryption in order to put the new algorithms in place. And what does that mean, right? If that can be defeated, then we need to be able to replace it. I'll never forget when we put SINGARs, which is the frequency hopping radios, into the battlefield. It was a game changer, and you don't have to worry about things, right? So we can do, who knows, maybe we go to a frequency hopping type of encryption for post quantum, because no matter how good your quantum is, if you're changing your keys every second or so, whatever it might be, and the other side, it's all about the timing and the timeliness of your data and how significant that is. So of course, transactions with finance need those milliseconds and microseconds. I'm not dealing with that with patents, but I do have to keep those things encrypted.
Well, and you are dealing with it because with encryption, because your entire network relies on encryption. Machine identities use encryption in order to work. And so if those things start breaking, if the RSA algorithm starts breaking, you got to be able to swap it out, which means you got to know every place it's in use.
Yes.
And that's one of the things, one of the reasons that we got together a couple of years ago was that we gave you the ability to do that and then automatically swap them all out. It's not good enough to turn it over to some people. Say, okay, here's where they are, go fix it. You got to do it really fast. So, hey, thanks for taking the time today. Really good discussion. Always a great discussion with you. Thank you again for your service. Thank you for what you do with the Patent and Trademark Office. So
you gotta love it.
There you go.
Thanks.
There you go. Next time, really looking forward to talking about AI.
Thank you very much. It's really my pleasure to speak with you. I love talking to you.
Thank you much. Likewise. Have a great day.
You too. Have a good one.